Hello, my name is Heather Swinson and I'm the Chief Stitcher for the first panel of the Cancer Tapestry. My father shot this cine film the summer before I became critically ill with viral pneumonia as a complication of measles. During my convalescence, my mum filled a shoebox full of craft projects to keep me occupied. My earliest memories of working with wool and thread can be traced back to that time. My story begins at the beginning of November in 2018 when I was diagnosed with stage 2 breast cancer. I found myself in January and February recovering from not just one surgical procedure but two, as they hadn't cleared all the cells from the first procedure. In February, I was probably at my lowest ebb. I was awaiting pathology reports to see if I needed further surgery, and I really wasn't very well. In due course, the surgeons gave me the all clear, and I was delighted to just go away and live my life. Shortly after that, still in February, I noticed that Andrew had posted on Facebook an extraordinary painting of his cancer diagnosis. You could tell right away the trauma he had experienced at that time. That got me thinking, what would it be like if I expressed in some graphic form what my experience of cancer had been? So one afternoon I sat down, I drew a graphic, and then my daughter popped in to see me. She and I spoke about the graphic and she went away. The following day she bumped into Andrew and Gillian in the street near where she lives in Portseaton. She told Andrew that she realised the conversation she and I had that afternoon was completely different from the sort of conversation we might have had we been sitting face to face over a cup of coffee. Andrew was intrigued and said he would like me to visit him in his studio to discuss my ideas. So, one February afternoon, my husband and I went out to Crockenzie, where Andrew showed me his latest project. He had before him the first panel all laid out, and he told me about his vision that this could be a tool for people talking about their cancer journeys and maybe helping one another in the process. No one was more surprised than I was when I left the studio that afternoon with the tapestry. I had absolutely no thought in my mind at that stage that I really wanted to be public with my cancer story. However, Andrew really had persuaded me, very gently as he does, that actually this could be something that would be helpful to one another, and I was certainly up for that.
One evening, while in hospital, my oncologist, Dr. Nixon, took great interest in my sketchbooks, and the next day brought in her own drawings to show me. When I was in hospital for chemotherapy, I got a phone call from a Rod Mountain, an ENT surgeon from Nine Wells Hospital. He had heard of the Great Tapestry of Scotland and said, when you have recovered from cancer, you should do a cancer tapestry. At the book launch of Claire Hunter's The Threads of Life, I saw Heather and her daughter, and I suggested to Heather, as she was going through treatment, she could add a few stitches to the first panel for the Cancer Tapestry.
He wanted the tapestry to be colourful, he wanted it to be joyful, because he wanted to emphasise that a lot of people survive cancer, but sadly some don't. And the tapestry reflects that, especially in some of the side panels. in which some 18 stitchers were able to record their own cancer memories, cancer journeys, and all sorts of organisations that helped. The other question I'm often asked is, how on earth did you get so many stitches to participate in this project? Well, it wasn't all up to me. At the very end, a sarcoma conference fairly bumped up the number of stitches. It has to be said, for the first few months, I relied on people who were coming to see me during convalescence, so that would include my family, my friends, our church family, who were very attentive, and gradually I became bolder and bolder. I would treat the Cancer Tapestry as a member of the family and took it everywhere, even on holiday to Keswick and then up to Orkney, and all the time I gathered stitchers.
What do you know about cancer, Jack? Do you know anyone who's had cancer?
Granny.
And what happened?
She had to go into this kind of tube, and she had to stay still for hours, and the only thing she could do is listen to music and wait.
In February, we were ready to make arrangements for Jeane Freeman to put in the last stitch at the Scottish Parliament. But we found ourselves in lockdown through the coronavirus. On our screens, we saw lots and lots of images of this awful virus, which was going to have a devastating effect on the country. I thought then that there should be some reference to this in this first panel of the Cancer Tapestry. And so I have made a coronavirus-shaped cell, and the last stitch will go right in the middle of that cell. Days before I was handed the panel, and weary with explaining to others the reasons for more than one surgery, I wrote in my diary, I seemed to be doing best focused on a project. The panel was exactly the distraction I needed. In a strange way, the year was a preparation for all that the coronavirus would bring. You see, we cancer patients know exactly how it feels to look death in the eye. We know how it is to live with great fear, helplessness and uncertainty as cells wreak havoc unseen in our bodies. With needles laden with the glorious colours of Appleton's 2-ply wool, we took pleasure in stabbing the linen as we discussed, encouraged, reflected, and even mourned together. It was inspiring and life-changing. In the words of William Blake, joy and woe are woven fine, a clothing for the soul divine. Under every grief and pine runs a joy with silken twine. So that's my story. Thank you for listening.